All right, we're just gonna be doing something simple this week. I'm gonna be replacing the slave cylinder in this Hummer H3. We're separating the transmission and the transfer case, ideally, and breaking our knuckles.
And elbows, answering the phone every 8 seconds.
All right, while he's down there getting the transmission and transfer case out, I'm gonna be up here undoing bell housing bolts.
All right, we got both drive shafts out. Got the transfer case about ready to come out. We're gonna check the transmission up a little bit. Hopefully still enough room for General Motors engineers to get the transfer case out. And then just a couple of bolts and a couple of things on the transmission. And we'll be ready to lay it on the floor and go from there.
So we found the only way to get the transfer case out without removing the motor was there's just enough room, or not even enough room, your torsion bar wiggles just enough, bends, bows just enough for you to twist the transfer case over it and then slide it back and out.
Getting it back in is gonna be a whole nother monkey.
Yep.
I think it'd be easier with a torch. But we've got about one bolt left in the transmission. We'll get the shifter top off, and then we'll be able to get it out and swap the slave cylinder, which has no business inside the transmission, by the way, at all, ever. And then we'll get the transmission back in pretty easy and have the fight of our lives getting the transfer case back on it. If we win that, the rest of it will go pretty easy.
So, Eric, if you could only listen to one movie soundtrack for the rest of your life, what movie would you take?
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
That's a great choice. Why is that?
Got all the best music.
So, coming down with the jack slightly.
Yep. Never mind, the transmission just came out.
Alrighty, so what do we do?
Come down with the jack easy. Hope we can hold it.
I'm just stay fucking way.
All right, push the jack in, son.
In?
Yeah. A little more. Now,
What do you want to do?
I want to jack the transmission up. All right, jack it up. Get a drain pan. Let's stop some of the mess over here. Just take a break and let it drain. And then we'll get some more dry. Right here.
Okay.
So we get straight. Hang on. I'm gonna have to do this one bad arm, and it ain't good. Watch out. I got it. She's down. 30. Huh?
Only spilled a couple gallons of fluid.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
So we've got the transmission out, as you just saw there.
All right, folks, since the beginning of time, nobody needed a slave cylinder inside the bell housing of the transmission, but cars never worked before. They just wouldn't work.
They didn't drive. They didn't go anywhere.
You couldn't use them. They were unusable until some idiot came up with the idea to put a slave cylinder in here so that when you press the clutch pedal, it would disengage the clutch. All those hundreds of years we used them outside. Even linkage, even slave cylinders, a lot of slave cylinders work, but they're outside with just a simple arm that sticks out so that you don't have to pull the whole car apart to swap that hydraulic cylinder. But to the idiot who did this, you're a freaking genius. With it, the seal's blown out, so when you press the clutch pedal, it just squirts oil, the brake fluid that disengages the clutch. Instead of pushing it out, it just pours out the rubber.
There's our new one. Should make life a lot easier. Alrighty.
All right, folks, so we took this bolt back out because it wasn't really tightening up. And what I found when we got to looking at it, you see that little shiny part right there on the end?
Where it's extra thick.
Yeah, watch what happens when I do this.
Pull the threads out.
That's the threads out of the bolt hole. It's been over tightened. Of course, there again, the bookworms that engineered this thing, there's only about that much of that bolt that goes into that hole instead of having, enough bolt to hold it. But it kind of still starts in there if it grabs a couple of threads. Most of the pressure, all it does is hold that thing still. So really, honestly, it don't need a lot of bolt. It just holds it still, and then the pressure, pushes out and releases the clutch. So I'm gonna try to see if I can get enough on there to where it'll hold.
So on an external slave, how would that work? Because I've never seen.
It's got a fork that sticks in the side of the transmission, and the fork will have a little arm that'll stick out a hole just like that, and it'll have a little indention that it sits on, and that fork's just a lever. And the external slave cylinder or linkage both worked the same for 200 years. I guess the first hydraulic slave cylinder I saw was in the 80s. Before that, it was all linkage.
So you just have mechanical linkage and no hydro.
Yeah, you push a cable, the arm would come off your clutch pedal, and it set on a little post that bolted in, and it had a pivot arm on it, and it would shove another linkage, and it'd shove the arm back out, which would shove the throw out bearing forward and disengage the clutch. And then when they first started using hydraulic slave cylinders, it was the same way. It was just, you had the same fork. The only difference is you had a hydraulic slave cylinder instead of linkage, and it just pushed that fork and worked. To put it inside the transmission, whoever did that, the world would have been better if their mama had stopped feeding them early. It just makes no sense to me. But a lot of stuff nowadays makes no sense to me. I mean, that's what we spend most of our time fussing about, is what in the world were they thinking when they came up with it.
Talking about pre-filling the transmission. Obviously, a automatic transmission is going to take new ATF, but as far as filling a manual, he's going to show us here.
All the transmission fluid's laying in the floor right now, so when we get it back in, we'll have to fill it off with transmission fluid. This filler plug right here, once we get the transmission in, you get the vehicle level, we'll fill it up where it's level. You can stick your finger in and touch it. I'll just break it loose, and it'll be loose when we get ready to put some in.
And we'll put gear roll in it.
Yep. Yeah, it just takes gear roll.
It's like a.
That looks like probably a 9.
So it's more like filling a. It's more like filling a
gearbox.
I'm trying to think of what it is. A differential.
Yeah. Basically the same. Just filling a gearbox. more time. Just slide it. JT, you're gonna hurt yourself. Come a time you wish you wouldn't do it like this. Trust me on that. It's gonna fall on you. It ain't gonna stay in there. You ain't gonna listen.
It's gonna make me hurt over you crying about how I can't get done. So, figure it out.
It ain't gonna stay up there.
I don't care. So let's get a transmission up here. My knee's holding it. Where's that?
Well, you can't put transmission in your knee holding it where you at. You got to get the jack right here. Let me get the right and hold it in there. Get your jack.
Got it.
So we hold that up there, and we've got our transfer case strapped in place. Can you see the view? Does that look like it's getting?
Yep. All right, now roll the jack in from the side. You're Yep, just like that. So we had to tuck that thing back up in there. We thought maybe that'd be easier than trying to get it in there with the transmission in. So far, I think we're right. What whipped us on the transmission is the slave cylinder that we put on is slap full of air. So we couldn't get the transmission pulled up. We finally got it beat and got it up. But now this has got to line that up in the output shaft of the transmission, obviously, with these studs getting lined up. It's got to turn 180 degrees so that the front drive shaft's on the right side. And you get all that with 3/16 of an inch. Between, when it's bolted up tight, 3/16 of an inch between the back of the transfer case and a cross member that was not made to come out.
You know what the worst thing is? The guy that designed this, probably sitting at home.
The worst thing about him is he's living. The worst thing about him is that his mama kept feeding him as a newborn baby. She should have realized the level of ignorance she was holding.
Get it out was to shove it in between, like we had to bend the torsion bar to get it to clear, and then spin around and shove it up there into the crossmember.
It's the daggumest thing I've ever fooled with in my life.
Perhaps you're going to ask a question.
If you can only listen to one movie soundtrack for the rest of your life, what movie is it?
My favorite movie soundtrack is Say No More Tomorrow.
What movie is that?
Smokey and the Bandit or one of the Fast and Furious.
Got to have the Jerry Reed and the.
Got it, you know. But then again, Fast and Furious, are we talking one Fast and Furious movie or all 10?
I think you got to pick one.
Well, I don't know. That's a hard question.
It's a hard between all the Fast and Furious movies.
Come back in 6 days and I'll have you an answer.
All right, we'll get a.
I'm going to go with my movie, the first Transformers. But the question of the day is, what is one movie soundtrack that you could listen to for the rest of your life?
Frozen.
Oh,
Yeah, Daddy. Did you say Frozen?
Yeah.